How many times have you been told that emotional unavailability is a flaw, that keeping your feelings guarded makes you cold, distant, or even broken? Society loves to label emotional detachment as something to fix, as if wearing your heart on your sleeve is the only way to be truly human. But what if I told you there's an ancient philosophy that flips this idea on its head? Stoicism doesn't just accept emotional unavailability, it celebrates it as a superpower. Imagine a life where you're no longer tossed around by every passing emotion, where setbacks don't devastate you, and where other people's drama doesn't become your own. That's the gift of strategic detachment. Today, we're diving into 25 Stoic truths that don't just make you emotionally unavailable, they make you emotionally unstoppable. Think about the last time overwhelming emotion clouded your judgment. Maybe it was anger that led to words you couldn't take back, or heartbreak that left you paralyzed for weeks. The Stoics understood this chaos all too well, and their solution wasn't to suppress emotions, it was to master them. By creating just enough distance between yourself and your reactions, you gain something priceless: clarity. Clarity to choose your responses, clarity to protect your peace, and clarity to engage with the world on your terms. This isn't about shutting people out, it's about building an inner fortress so strong that no external storm can shake you. And the best part, you can still care deeply, just without the self-destructive spiral. So what does this look like in practice? Over the next 25 truths, we'll explore how Stoicism turns emotional unavailability into your greatest strength. You'll learn how to detach from outcomes without losing your drive, how to set unshakable boundaries without guilt, and how to face loss or betrayal with quiet resilience. These aren't quick fixes or empty slogans, they're time-tested principles that philosophers, leaders, and warriors have relied on for centuries. Whether you're tired of feeling emotionally drained or just want to navigate life with more purpose and less turbulence, this is your roadmap. Let's begin. You know that sinking feeling when something outside your control derails your entire day. A careless comment from a coworker, a cancelled flight, or even bad weather ruining your plans. It's easy to spiral into frustration. But here's the first Stoic truth that changes everything. You can't control external events, only your reactions. Epictetus, the once enslaved philosopher who became one of Stoicism's greatest teachers, put it bluntly: some things are up to us and some are not. Your reputation, not up to you. Other people's opinions, not up to you. Traffic, politics, or whether your boss is in a bad mood, not up to you. But here's what is yours: your judgment, your effort, and how you choose to respond. That's the dichotomy of control, and it's your first shield against emotional chaos. Take workplace criticism, for example. Imagine your colleague dismisses your idea in a meeting. The instinct is to obsess over their tone, question their intent, or worse, doubt your own worth. But the Stoic pauses. They ask, is this person's reaction within my control? No. Is my preparation, my professionalism, or my decision to learn from the feedback within my control? Absolutely. By shifting focus to what you can influence, you drain the drama of its power. The criticism doesn't disappear, but your emotional entanglement with it does. Family drama reveals the same pattern. A relative says something hurtful at dinner. The old you might replay the words for days, fueling resentment. The Stoic version of you acknowledge the sting, then ask, did I choose their words? No. Can I choose my boundaries, my compassion, or even my presence next time? Yes. This isn't indifference, it's empowered detachment. You stop handing strangers and loved alike the keys to your emotional state. The beauty of this truth, it's not passive acceptance, it's active liberation. When you stop wasting energy on what you can't change, you free up reserves for what truly matters: your growth, your peace, your ability to act with intention. The storm rages outside, but you're no longer standing in the rain. You're the one holding the umbrella. Here's the brutal truth you already know but probably hate admitting: pain is part of the deal. A breakup, a betrayal, a failure that keeps you up at night. These aren't glitches in the system, they are the system. But here's where most people get it wrong. Stoicism doesn't deny the reality of pain. It denies the inevitability of suffering. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor who ruled Rome through war and plague, scribbled this reminder to himself: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That's the key. Pain is the injury, suffering is the story you layer on top. Think of it like a broken bone. The initial snap, unavoidable, but the months spent obsessing over who caused it, how unfair it was, or how it'll never heal, that's optional. Emotional pain works the same way. Someone betrays your trust, that stings, but the weeks spent replaying conversations, imagining revenge, or convincing yourself you'll never recover, that's not the betrayal's doing. That's you amplifying the signal. The Stoics called this ascent. The moment you take raw data, pain, and add your interpretation, suffering, here's how to short-circuit that cycle. When hardship hits, ask, what part of this is fact and what part is my narrative? For example, losing a job is factual, the fear that you'll never recover is fiction. A friend's harsh words are factual, the belief that no one values you is fiction. This isn't positive thinking, it's precision thinking. You're not denying the pain, you're refusing to drown in the drama around it. Ever notice how athletes frame grueling workouts? They don't say, this is torture, they say, this is making me stronger. That's Stoic reframing in action. Marcus wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, the obstacle is the training. When someone tries to manipulate you with guilt or anger, their words might land like a punch, but you decide whether to stay on the ropes or use the impact to steady your footing. Take social rejection. The initial hurt is biological. We're wired to crave belonging. But the suffering comes when you spin it into, I'm unlovable or they're all against me. The Stoic alternative, this feels awful, but it doesn't define me. Maybe this is freeing me up for better connections. That shift doesn't numb the pain, it just prevents the infection. This truth isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about containing them, like holding a grenade without pulling the pin. You feel the weight, the danger, but you don't escalate the blast. And that's how emotional unavailability becomes a strength, not by avoiding pain, but by refusing to let it metastasize. You'll still get hit, you'll just stop handing your enemies the ammunition. The room feels like it's closing in, your chest tightens, your pulse races, and suddenly, every word spoken feels like a personal attack. We've all been there, trapped in the heat of a moment where emotions hijack reason. But what if you could step outside yourself just for a few seconds and see the situation with the clarity of an outsider? That's the power of Stoic cognitive distancing. Your perception doesn't just reflect reality, it creates it, and with the right tools you can reshape it. Picture this, you're arguing with a partner about something trivial, a misplaced dish, an offhand comment, and suddenly it escalates into a full-blown battle of wills. In that moment, your brain isn't processing facts, it's weaving a narrative of injustice, disrespect, or even betrayal. The Stoics knew this trap well. Epictetus offered a lifeline. It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things. In other words, the dish isn't the problem. It's the story you're telling yourself about what the dish means. Here's how to break free. The next time emotions start to boil, try the mountaintop exercise. Imagine floating above the scene, seeing yourself and the other person as tiny figures in a vast landscape. From this height, the intensity shrinks. That snide remark, it's just a blip in the noise of daily life. The tension in your shoulders, a temporary ripple. This isn't about dismissing your feelings, it's about contextualizing them. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, reminding himself, take a bird's eye view and see how pointless so many of our anxieties are. Or consider the journaling technique used by Seneca. When wronged, he'd write 2 columns, one for what happened and one for what he added to it. For example, "They ignored my text" might be the fact, but "they're deliberately excluding me" is the fiction. Spotting the gap between event and interpretation is like turning on a light in a dark room. You see the shadows for what they are, projections, not reality. Even modern psychology backs this. Cognitive behavioral therapy, a direct descendant of Stoicism, calls it decatastrophizing. Ask, what's the worst that could happen? Then ask, could I survive that? You'll almost always find the answer is yes. That cancelled plan isn't abandonment, it's an evening reclaimed. That criticism isn't a verdict on your worth, it's data to refine your craft. The goal isn't to become emotionally flatlined. It's to choose your reactions instead of being chosen by them. Like an artist stepping back from a canvas, sometimes you need distance to see the whole picture. And in that space between stimulus and response, you'll find something extraordinary: freedom. The freedom to decide whether this moment controls you or becomes another stroke in the masterpiece of your resilience. And isn't that the ultimate form of emotional strength? Not the absence of feeling, but the ability to hold it at arm's length, examine it, and say, "This doesn't have to mean what my first instinct insists it does." That's how perception becomes power. The world throws the same events at everyone. Your edge is in how you frame them. So the next time emotions threaten to narrow your vision, remember, you're not stuck in the storm. You're the one who gets to draw the map. Imagine looking at your bank balance and realizing you've spent half your savings on things you can't even remember: trinkets, impulse buys, subscriptions you never used. Now replace money with time. That's the real currency you're hemorrhaging every time you indulge in petty arguments, grudges, or the endless dissection of someone else's motives. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who saw through this waste like no other, put it starkly on the shortness of life. It's not that we have too little time, but that we squander so much of it. And nowhere is that squandering more obvious than in the emotional energy we pour into conflicts that don't deserve it. Consider 2 versions of yourself. Version 1 spends 40 minutes venting to a friend about how your neighbor always parks too close to your driveway. Version 2 spends those same 40 minutes reading, learning a skill, or even sitting in silence, recharging. Both choices are about time, but only one treats it like the finite resource it is. That's the heart of Seneca's warning. You're living as if destined to live forever. Your own frailty never occurs to you. Emotional unavailability, in this light, isn't coldness, it's a ruthless prioritization of what deserves your limited days. Think about gossip. It feels harmless in the moment, a quick dopamine hit as you dissect someone else's mistakes. But zoom out. That 15-minute coffee break spent speculating about a coworker's divorce. That's 15 minutes you'll never get back, minutes that could have been spent planning your next career move, calling a loved one, or simply letting your mind rest. Seneca called this borrowing trouble, importing other people's chaos into your psyche and paying for it with your precious time. The emotionally unavailable person isn't rude, they're selective. They've audited their emotional expenditures and cut the frivolous spending. Here's the litmus test: when resentment or drama knocks, ask, will this matter in 5 years? Or even 5 weeks? Most conflicts shrink under that spotlight. The colleague who took credit for your idea, annoying, yes, but spending evenings fuming about it. That's a tax you're choosing to pay with hours of your life. The Stoic alternative: acknowledge the injustice, extract any lesson, maybe document your contributions next time. Then redirect that energy towards something that does matter in 5 years: your craft, your health, your peace. Seneca's most chilling observation: you act like mortals in all you fear and like immortals in all you desire. We fear running out of money but waste time like it's infinite. We crave legacy but spend our days drowning in distractions. Emotional unavailability, when done right, is the antidote. It's saying, This emotion, this conflict, this petty grievance, it doesn't get to rent space in my mind unless it's worth the cost. Because time isn't just money, it's life, and every minute spent in unnecessary emotional turmoil is a minute stolen from what could have been joy, growth, or simply being present. The next time you feel pulled into someone else's storm, hear Seneca's voice. You're dying every day, every hour, not to scare you but to wake you. To remind you that emotional detachment isn't about lacking feeling, it's about fiercely protecting the limited time you have to feel anything worthwhile. The clock's ticking, the question is who and what deserves to hear it. Heartbreak cuts deeper than most pains because we convince ourselves it will last forever. That sleepless night after the breakup when you're certain you'll never love again, that hollow ache when their name pops up on your phone, the Stoics would nod knowingly, not because they dismiss your pain, but because they've perfected the art of watching emotions pass like weather. This is premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, and it's your secret weapon against emotional overwhelm. Picture this, you're in a relationship deeply invested. Now imagine consciously asking yourself each morning, what if this ends today? Not to breed fear, but to vaccinate against it. The Stoics weren't pessimists, they were realists who knew that by rehearsing loss before it happens, you strip it of its power to devastate. Like fire drills for the heart, this practice doesn't prevent the fire, it ensures you know the exits when the heat rises. Take a breakup. The untrained mind responds like it's facing an unprecedented catastrophe. But the Stoic, they've already walked through this scenario 100 times in their mind. They've felt the phantom ache of goodbye, visualized packing boxes, even rehearsed the first solo dinner. When it actually happens, the blow lands softer, not because they care less, but because they've already done the emotional math. This hurts, but it's not unfamiliar territory. That's the magic of premeditatio malorum. It turns earthquakes into tremors. Consider how we handle physical pain. Stub your toe unexpectedly and you'll swear the room shakes. But an athlete pushing through a marathon, they expect the burn in their lungs, the protest of their muscles, and because they foresaw it, they can keep moving. Emotions operate the same way. The surprise of grief is what paralyzes. The anticipated pang is something you can breathe through. Here's how to apply it. Next time you're bracing for a tough conversation, a job rejection, or even a friend's betrayal, close your eyes and mentally play the worst-case scenario. Not to dwell in misery, but to defang it. Ask, what would I do if this happened? You'll find your brain starts drafting solutions instead of spinning in panic. I'd cry, then call my sister. I'd update my resume. I'd take a week to reset. Suddenly, the monster under the bed has a blueprint. The key is in the framing. This isn't about assuming the worst will happen. It's about acknowledging that it could. And in that acknowledgement, you reclaim sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The cucumber is bitter. Throw it away. There are brambles in the path. Step aside. That's all you need to know." Emotions, like bitter fruit or thorny paths, don't demand drama, just adjustment. Watch a child fall off a bike. For a split second, they check the adults' faces before deciding whether to wail or laugh. That's all emotion ever is, a signal waiting for interpretation. Premeditatio malorum teaches you to interrupt the panic reflex, to say, "Ah yes, this pain, I've met you before, you're intense but you're not permanent." And with that, the storm loses its teeth. The tears may still come, but they won't drown you. Because here's the truth no one tells you about emotional unavailability. It's not about feeling less. It's about fearing less. When you know sadness, anger, or longing are just visitors, not squatters, you stop barricading the door. You let them in, serve them tea, and watch them leave when the time comes. And that's how you master the art of holding love lightly, by loving fully, but never forgetting that all seasons change, even winter. Words only hold the power we assign them. That's the core of Epictetus' legendary declaration. No one can hurt you without your consent. At first glance, it sounds like philosophical bravado until you realize it's a psychological blueprint for emotional bulletproofing. Think of it this way: insults are like fire. Throw a match into a damp forest and it fizzles out. Throw that same match into a pile of dry kindling and you've got an inferno. The match isn't the problem, the combustible material is. Your mind decides which one you're made of. Social media trolls prove this daily. A stranger mocks your appearance in a comment. You have two choices: fuel the fire by internalizing their words as truth, or let it fizzle by remembering they're yelling into a void they'll forget by lunch. The pain doesn't come from the pixels on the screen, it comes from the meaning you attach to them. The Stoics called this prohersis, your faculty of choice in assigning value to external events. A troll's comment has zero inherent power. Your judgment about what it means is the only variable that matters. Modern workplaces reveal the same dynamic. A boss dismisses your idea in front of the team. The sting isn't in their words, it's in your unspoken belief that their approval defines your worth. Epictetus, who was physically crippled as a slave before becoming a philosopher, knew this firsthand. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. When you stop conflating others' opinions with reality, their words lose the authority to wound. Here's the tactical shift: treat insults like spam emails. You wouldn't rage over a phishing attempt claiming you've won $1 million. You'd mark it as junk and move on. Apply that same indifference to personal attacks. A relative says you're selfish for setting boundaries. That's their junk mail, not your inbox. A date ghosts you and you're tempted to spiral into self-doubt. Their silence isn't a verdict, it's an unfiltered message you never need to open. This isn't about pretending words don't land. It's about recognizing you hold the mute button. Marcus Aurelius practiced this as emperor, facing constant slander. It's ridiculous not to escape from your own vices, which is possible, while trying to escape others' vices, which is impossible. Translation: you can't control who throws arrows, but you can refuse to stand in the archery range. The emotionally unavailable person isn't numb, they're discerning. They've audited whose opinions get VIP access to their psyche and revoked the passes of habitual offenders, because here's the secret no one tells you: withdrawal of consent isn't suppression, it's liberation. When you stop granting others the right to define your worth, you reclaim something radical: the unshakable certainty that you alone hold the keys to your emotional kingdom. And that's not armor, that's sovereignty. Expectations are emotional IOUs promissory notes we write in our heads, then get furious when others fail to cash. "They should have known better," or "I deserve this treatment," is a silent contract you drafted without the other person's signature. The Stoics called this adiaphora, the art of distinguishing what's within your control, your actions, from what isn't, literally everything else. And nowhere does this distinction bleed more than in relationships, where we routinely mistake hopes for entitlements. Take dating. You meet someone charming, mentally script a future together, then feel betrayed when they don't reciprocate with the enthusiasm you imagined. But here's the rupture: they never agreed to your script. Your expectation, not their behavior, set the trap. Epictetus saw this clearly. Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do. That's not resignation, it's strategic detachment. By releasing the shoulds, you dismantle the landmines before they can explode. Parent-child dynamics reveal the same pattern. A mother assumes her adult son should call weekly. When he doesn't, she interprets it as rejection rather than seeing his busy schedule for what it is: neutral facts, not personal slights. The Stoic approach: state your needs clearly. "I'd love to hear from you more." Then release the expectation. No silent tally of disappointments, no emotional blackmail. Just an honest ask followed by the freedom to let reality unfold without moral judgment. Workplace resentments thrive on this too. You stay late for months, expecting your boss to notice and promote you. When they don't, bitterness festers, but the unspoken contract was yours alone. Marcus Aurelius advised, begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall meet interference, ingratitude, insolence, not to breed cynicism, but to inoculate against surprise when others inevitably act according to their nature, not your fantasies. The pivot happens when you trade expectations for preferences. Preferences acknowledge desire without demanding compliance. I'd love if my partner planned our anniversary is a preference. If they loved me, they'd know to book my favorite restaurant is an expectation rigged to detonate. One leaves room for communication, the other for resentment. This isn't about lowering standards, it's about raising self-awareness. The emotionally unavailable don't expect less, they attach less. They state their terms, observe others' choices, and adjust accordingly. No silent scorekeeping, no unspoken rules. Like a gardener who plants seeds but doesn't rage at the sky for rain, they invest without demanding a particular harvest. Because ultimately, expectations are just resentments waiting to happen, and life's too short to stockpile grudges you authored yourself. There's a dangerous myth floating around that emotional strength means locking your feelings away like some forbidden vault. But Stoicism was never about building walls so high nothing gets in. It was about installing a secure gate, one you alone control. The ancient Stoics weren't emotionless statues. They were masters of strategic vulnerability, understanding that not all openness is wise, but not all restraint is strength. The difference: choice, tactical awareness, knowing when to lower the drawbridge and when to keep it raised. Picture two types of vulnerability. One is impulsive, spewing unfiltered emotions to anyone who'll listen, mistaking exposure for authenticity. The other is disciplined, consciously sharing your inner world with those who have earned access. The first leaves you defenseless, the second fortifies connection without sacrificing sovereignty. Seneca captured this perfectly in his letters. Trust no one unless you first tested them. Not because people are inherently untrustworthy, but because trust is a privilege, not a default setting. Here's how to practice this discernment. Start with Stoic journaling, a tool Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius used to audit their emotional exposures. Each evening, record 3 things. 1. What did I feel today that surprised me? The emotion itself. 2. Who heard about it and why them? The audience selection. 3. Did sharing this clarify or complicate my peace? The aftermath. Over time, patterns emerge. Maybe venting to your coworker about your relationship problems left you feeling exposed, while confiding in your oldest friend brought relief. That's data, not about the people, but about your judgment. The Stoics weren't against connection, they were against unexamined connection. Modern therapy echoes this. Ever notice how therapists don't immediately dive into your deepest traumas? They build rapport first, assessing your capacity to handle the excavation. That's Stoic vulnerability in action, layered, paced, and always intentional. Now consider toxic emotional openness. Social media has normalized broadcasting raw pain to strangers, mistaking visibility for healing. But the Stoics would ask, what's the virtue in this? Is it courage or a cry for validation? There's a stark difference between screaming into the void and whispering to a chosen few who have proven they'll whisper back with care. Real-world application. Before sharing something fragile, run Seneca's 3-question filter. Is this necessary, or am I just filling silence? Is this person capable of holding it? Have they earned my stories? Will this sharing serve my growth, or just my momentary need to be seen? The emotionally unavailable label often gets slapped on those who refuse to perform vulnerability on demand. But true Stoic strength isn't about hoarding emotions, it's about treating them like heirlooms. You wouldn't hand a family relic to a passerby. You'd wait for the right hands, the right moment, the right intention. That's not coldness, that's reverence, because here's the secret: vulnerability, when chosen wisely, doesn't weaken your boundaries, it reinforces them. Every time you say, "I'll share this with X but not Y," you're not hiding, you're curating, and curation is the hallmark of a mind that knows its worth. The world will try to convince you that locked doors mean empty rooms, but the Stoics knew better. Some doors stay closed not because there's nothing inside, but because what's inside is priceless. Silence isn't just the absence of noise. It's a deliberate act of restraint, a weapon sharper than any retort. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who faced exile with the same calm he brought to his lectures, put it plainly: what we don't say, we don't have to defend. In a world addicted to instant reactions, texts fired off in anger, sarcastic comebacks, impulsive confessions, strategic silence is the ultimate flex of emotional unavailability. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you refuse to let others dictate when you speak. Think of the last time someone baited you: a passive-aggressive comment at dinner, a co-worker's backhanded compliment, or a partner's guilt-tripping sigh. The tension hangs in the air, demanding you fill it with justification, defense, or worse, an apology for something you didn't do. This is where the untrained ego caves, scrambling to explain, appease, or retaliate. But the Stoic, they let the silence stretch, not as a manipulative tactic, but as a reclaiming of power. By refusing to engage on demand, you reveal something startling. Their words only have weight if you hand them the scales. History's greatest negotiators and leaders understood this. When Gandhi faced British interrogators, his silence confounded them more than any protest. They needed him to react, to plead, to rage, to confirm their dominance. His quiet refusal turned the tables. Musonius taught the same principle. The more a man speaks, the more likely he is to say what should not be said. Every word you withhold is a chess move, forcing the other player to reveal their strategy while you conserve yours. Consider modern conflicts. A friend cancels plans last minute with a flimsy excuse. The impulse is to text back instantly, "You always do this," or "fine, whatever." But the emotionally unavailable person, they might wait hours, even days, not to punish but to decide if the issue warrants their energy. That pause alone communicates more than any rant. It says, "My attention isn't yours by default, it's earned." Even in positive moments, silence holds power. When praised, most people rush to deflect or reciprocate out of awkwardness. But try this: someone says, "You crushed that presentation." Instead of, "Oh, it was nothing," just say, "Thank you," and let the praise linger. No dilution, no self-deprecation. The Stoic knows that accepting good things with quiet grace trains others to offer them sincerely, not as social niceties, but as truths. The magic lies in what silence doesn't do. It doesn't escalate, doesn't supply ammunition, and most crucially, it doesn't betray your uncertainty. Ever notice how people rush to fill pauses when they're insecure? So, anyway, that's fear of being uninteresting or unlikable. But when you're comfortable in silence, you radiate something unnerving: the certainty that your worth isn't measured in syllables per minute. Practice this today. Next time someone tries to pull you into drama, count to 10 in your head before responding, not as a suppression tactic, but as a recalibration. Ask, "Does this deserve my voice?" Often, you'll find the answer is no. And that's the hidden superpower of emotional unavailability. Not just controlling what you feel, but who gets to witness it. Because the loudest statements aren't made with words, they're made by the deafening quiet when you choose to walk away. Every disaster feels unthinkable until it happens. That gnawing fear of losing your job, waking up to a breakup text, or finding out someone you trusted has been lying to your face, it paralyzes because we treat these possibilities like monsters under the bed. But what if you could drag those monsters into the light and realize they're made of papier-mâché? That's the essence of Seneca's negative visualization, a mental rehearsal so effective it turns terror into preparation. Start with this exercise. Tonight, as you lie in bed, visualize waking up to an email. Your position has been eliminated. Feel the gut punch. Notice where the tension coils in your body. Now trace the next steps: updating your resume, messaging your network, cutting non-essential expenses. You're not just fantasizing doom, you're drafting a contingency plan. Seneca called this premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils, and its power lies in subtraction. By mentally deleting the element of surprise, you're left with something far less scary, a problem to solve, not a fate to endure. Betrayal follows the same pattern. Picture discovering your closest friend has betrayed a secret. The initial shock would sting, yes, but then what? You'd reassess the friendship. Mourn, then rebuild trust more selectively. The Stoic twist: you've now robbed the actual event of its emotional novelty. Like watching a horror movie 3 times, by the final viewing, the jump scares barely register. This isn't pessimism, it's emotional vaccination. Just as exposing your body to a weakened virus builds immunity, exposing your mind to controlled doses of adversity inoculates against panic. Modern psychology confirms this. Studies on stress inoculation training show that people who mentally rehearse crises outperform others under real pressure. Navy SEAL don't wait for combat to practice composure. They simulate hellish scenarios until their brains recognize, "I've survived this before in my mind." Try it now with a personal fear. Maybe it's public humiliation. Imagine tripping onstage during a presentation. Feel the heat in your cheeks, then fast forward. Would the audience really remember in a week? Would it affect your expertise? Often, you'll find the aftermath is quieter than the dread. Seneca's letters reveal his daily practice. Set aside days where you pretend poverty has come, or bereavement or illness. Not to invite misery, but to expose a liberating truth. Your worst-case scenario is survivable. That project you're terrified to pitch, picture the rejection. Then picture yourself refining the idea and pitching again. The relationship you're clinging to out of fear, imagine walking away. Now notice you're still breathing. Here's the paradox no one tells you. By repeatedly visiting your emotional rock bottom in your imagination, you drain it of its power to ambush you. The monster under the bed shrinks when you realize it's just shadows. And shadows can't hurt you. That cutting remark from your boss wasn't about your performance, it was about their insecurity. That friend's sudden criticism of your life choices. More about their own regrets than your path. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king who endured endless palace intrigue, scribbled this reminder in his Meditations. When people injure you, ask yourself what good or harm they thought would come of it. If you understand that, you'll feel sympathy rather than outrage. That's the key to handling projections, recognizing that people don't react to you. They react to their version of you, distorted by their inner battles. Take the workplace. A manager snaps at you for a minor mistake. The untrained mind spirals. "I'm incompetent." The Stoic pauses and asks, what's their story? Maybe they're terrified of their own superiors and taking it out on you. Perhaps they're drowning in unmet expectations. Their outburst isn't a verdict on your worth, it's a window into their unrest. This isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about refusing to let someone else's unresolved pain become your emotional load. Romantic relationships magnify this. A partner accuses you of being distant. Before internalizing it, consider, are they truly observing your actions, or are they projecting their fear of abandonment onto you? The Stoic response isn't defensiveness, it's curiosity. "Help me understand what you're seeing," opens dialogue without surrender. "I hear your concern, but that's not my intention," establishes truth without attack. Even strangers project. That rude cashier isn't reacting to you. They're reacting to the 100 customers before you who treated them like a machine. Marcus wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." When someone hurls their negativity your way, imagine holding up a mirror. Their words hit the glass and bounce back to them. You walk away unmarked. Here's the script for deflecting projections. 1. Pause. Don't absorb the emotion in real time. Let it hang in the air like smoke. It'll dissipate if you don't fan it. 2. Decode. Ask silently, what's really behind this comment? Trace the emotion to its source, often fear, shame, or unmet needs. 3. Respond, don't react. Try "it sounds like you're feeling" to reflect their state without adopting it. 4. Anchor. Remind yourself, this isn't about me. I control only my side of the bridge. Family gatherings are projection gold mines. Aunt Carol says you're selfish for moving abroad. Instead of arguing, see it. She's mourning her own lack of adventure. Your cousin mocks your career. That's his own dissatisfaction speaking. The emotionally unavailable don't take the bait. They see the fishing rod trembling in unsteady hands. Marcus Aurelius faced constant betrayal and still ruled with compassion because he grasped this truth. Hurt people hurt people. When you stop personalizing others' projections, you achieve something remarkable. You become immune to arrows that were never aimed at you in the first place. And that's the ultimate emotional armor, not thicker skin, but clearer vision. Love isn't about losing yourself in someone else, it's about finding more of yourself through the connection. The Stoics called this oikeiosis, a concept often mistranslated as detachment but really meaning hierarchical concern, knowing what to prioritize without sacrificing your core. Picture two trees planted side by side. The unhealthy version grows in tangled roots, each stifling the other's nutrients. The healthy version, roots that interlace just enough to share strength while still drinking deeply from their own soil. That's the Stoic balance: closeness without collapse, intimacy without immolation. Modern psychology pathologizes this as avoidant attachment, a fear of vulnerability. But the Stoics would argue there's wisdom in measured closeness. Take a couple where one partner gives up friendships, hobbies, even career goals to prioritize the relationship. Society calls this devotion. Stoicism calls it self-abandonment. Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters. In love, extraneous matters are anything that isn't your integrity, your growth, your sovereignty. A relationship that demands you shrink to fit isn't love, it's annexation. Here's how to spot the difference. Healthy detachment says, I adore you, but my happiness isn't your job. Avoidance says, I'll never let you close enough to matter. One builds interdependence, like two musicians playing separate notes that harmonize. The other constructs emotional bunkers. The Stoic test: ask, does this connection make me more myself or less? When Marcus Aurelius wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good person should be one, he wasn't just talking about morals, he was saying, don't argue your worth in relationships. Live it. Consider how oikeiosis plays out in daily choices. Your partner wants to move for their dream job, but yours is location dependent. Avoidant attachment would either flee the conflict or resentfully comply. Stoic love, you'd weigh the options without guilt. Can we both thrive here? If not, is there a third path? No ultimatums, no self-betrayal, just clear-eyed negotiation where both people's expansion matters equally. History offers a revealing contrast. Cicero, who studied Stoicism, famously prioritized his political career over his daughter's pleas to stay home, a move some called cold. But Seneca, writing to his wife during exile, showed how boundaries and devotion coexist. I am not absent from you if you hold me in your thoughts. He loved deeply without demanding constant proximity. That's the nuance. Love isn't measured by how much you fuse, but by how much you both grow. Practical application. Audit your relationships with these questions. After time together, do I feel energized or drained? Do I hide passions they don't share, or do they celebrate them? When we disagree, is my priority to win or to understand? The answers reveal whether you're practicing Stoic love or Stockholm Syndrome in a nicer package. Because here's the truth no one tells you. The right kind of emotional unavailability isn't walls, it's breathing room. Space where you can both stretch toward the light without casting shadows on each other. And that's how love becomes not a cage but a sky. Your boundaries aren't rules you impose on others, they're standards you enforce for yourself. That's the essence of hierarchical circles of concern, an ancient Stoic exercise that maps your emotional investments like concentric rings. At the center, you, next ring, family, then friends, community, strangers. Most people live reactively, letting whoever shouts loudest, whether a toxic coworker or a manipulative relative, invade their inner circles. The Stoic approach: you decide who gets access and how far they're allowed in. Think of it like a nightclub. You wouldn't let a rowdy stranger bypass the velvet rope, yet we routinely grant emotional VIP access to people who haven't earned it. Emotional vampires, those who drain you with complaints, guilt trips, or constant crises, are masters at vaulting boundaries because they've learned you won't stop them. But here's the truth: their behavior continues because you've allowed the lesson that it works. Take the chronic complainer. They rant daily about trivial problems, not for solutions but for validation. Your instinct might be to soothe them, but each time you do, you teach them, "This is how you get my attention." The Stoic alternative, a neutral that sounds frustrating. What's your plan to handle it? No rescue, no drama, just a gentle redirection back to their own agency. Suddenly, they'll either step up or find someone else to entertain their theatrics. Parents often test these boundaries. A mother calls for the 5th time today, demanding updates on your life. If you always answer, you're teaching her, "Your anxiety dictates my availability." The Stoic response: "I love you, but I'll call back when I have space to talk meaningfully." No anger, no guilt, just a quiet reset of expectations. Workplace martyrs operate the same way. That colleague who needs you to take their shift last minute, their emergency isn't your obligation. Unless you've trained them, it is. "Try this. I can't this time, but I hope you find coverage." No justification, no apologies. Most people will mirror the level of respect you show yourself. Hierarchical circles reveal a liberating truth: you aren't responsible for others' reactions to your boundaries, only for maintaining them with consistency. The first time you say no, there might be pushback. The 10th time, they'll adjust, because boundaries aren't walls to keep people out, they're drawbridges you operate with intention. An emotional unavailability at its core is simply the wisdom to know who deserves the key. Role play sharpens this skill. Rehearse responses to common invasions. "You're so selfish for not helping." Right arrow: "I appreciate your perspective, but my decision stands. If you loved me, you'd cancel your plans." Right arrow: "Love doesn't mean abandoning my needs." Notice the pattern. No defensiveness, no engagement with the drama, just clear, unshakable statements of fact. Like training a dog, people learn fastest when your reactions are consistent. The emotional vampires in your life don't need cruelty, they need firmness. And firmness done right is a kindness to you both. Because here's what no one tells you: the most compassionate people aren't those who say yes to everything. They're the ones who say no with such clarity that others stop asking them to betray themselves. That's Stoic boundary setting, not rejection but redirection. Not coldness, but the courage to love others without abandoning who you are. And that's a lesson worth teaching. Your mind is like a crowded subway station, thoughts pushing past each other, shouting for attention, most of them just noise. But here's the radical Stoic truth: you don't have to board every train. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, taught that between every external event and your reaction lies a sacred space called assent, the split second where you decide whether to engage with a thought or let it pass like a stranger's conversation. Most people treat every mental whisper as urgent, treating passing worries like fire alarms and idle fears like prophecies, the emotionally unavailable. They've mastered the art of selective attention, recognizing that not every thought is worth the price of admission. Picture this: you're about to present at work when a thought hisses, "What if you embarrass yourself?" The untrained mind latches onto it, spiraling into visions of stuttering and judgment. But the Stoic pauses. They ask, "Is this thought useful? No. Is it true?" Unproven. Will dwelling on it improve my performance? Absolutely not. With that, they let it dissolve like mist. This is Zeno's discipline in action, treating thoughts as guests, not rulers. You wouldn't let a random passerby rearrange your living room. Why let a random thought rearrange your peace? Now apply this to conversations. Your friend launches into their weekly rant about their ex. The old you might nod along, absorbing their anger like second-hand smoke. The Stoic version, you employ the Stoic pause, a deliberate 3-second silence before responding. In that breath, you ask, is this dialogue nourishing or draining? If it's the latter, you redirect like a train conductor switching tracks. That sounds tough. What's one thing within your control here? No hostility, no disconnection, just a gentle refusal to let their chaos become yours. Even social media thrives on hijacking your ascent. Scroll past a politically charged post and your fingers itch to type a rebuttal. But the Stoic checks, will this exchange expand my wisdom or just my ego? 9 times out of 10, you'll close the app and reclaim your focus for something that actually moves the needle in your life. Here's how to train this muscle. Carry a mental ledger for a day. Each time a negative thought arises, my boss hates me, I'll never succeed, label it. Opinion, not fact. Then grade its utility, helpful or harmful. You'll quickly notice most thoughts are junk mail, not priority correspondence. The emotionally unavailable aren't thoughtless, they're thought selective. They've audited their mental inbox and set up filters, because here's the secret no productivity guru will tell you. Attention isn't just focus, it's fidelity. Every thought you entertain is a vow to carry its weight, and some thoughts, they're not worthy of your vows. Happiness that hinges on external validation is like building a house on rented land, one eviction notice away from collapse. That promotion, that compliment, that romantic gesture, they're all fleeting gusts of wind that can't sustain your inner fire. The Stoics called this deeper, self-sufficient joy eudaimonia, a flourishing that comes not from what happens to you, but from how you choose to engage with life itself. Cleans, the Stoic philosopher who carried water by night to fund his studies, demonstrated this daily. Before eating, he'd pause to express gratitude not just for the meal, but for the capacity to enjoy it. That subtle shift from thanking the world for feeding you to thanking yourself for appreciating nourishment is the essence of emotional sovereignty. Consider modern parallels. How often do you postpone happiness until some future milestone? I'll be happy when I get the raise, when they apologize, when life finally feels fair. That's emotional dependency disguised as ambition. The Stoic alternative, I can cultivate joy right now by aligning with my values regardless of externals. Think of 2 people stuck in traffic. One white knuckles the wheel, raging at red lights as personal insults. The other listens to an audiobook, appreciating stolen moments to learn. Same traffic, radically different experiences. Clean's gratitude rituals trained this muscle. By consciously appreciating his own ability to persist, to adapt, to find meaning in hardship, he immunized himself against the addiction to, if only, happiness. Social media magnifies this dependency. Every like triggers a dopamine hit, every ignored post feels like rejection. But scroll through Stoic philosophy and you'll find an ancient antidote, ataraxia, the undisturbed mind. Not apathy, but equilibrium. Imagine posting a photo not to harvest validation, but because the moment itself was worth capturing. That's eudaimonia in pixels. The emotionally unavailable label often gets slapped on those who refuse to outsource their worth. But true Stoic joy isn't about isolation, it's about integration. You can relish a partner's affection without needing it to complete you. You can enjoy compliments without requiring them to breathe. Like a tree drawing water from deep roots, your stability comes from within, even as you stretch toward the sun. Clean's nightly practice holds the key. Before sleep, he'd review 3 things. 1. What did I contribute today beyond external rewards, not who praised me? But did I act with integrity? 2. Where did I find beauty others might overlook? A stranger's kindness, the slant of afternoon light. 3. What can I release before tomorrow? Resentments, disappointments, gifts he refused to accept. Try this for a week. You'll notice something startling. External validation starts to feel like dessert, nice to have, but not the main course. Because happiness that's handmade is the only kind no one can take away. And that's the ultimate emotional rebellion, not needing the world to love you back in order to love yourself. Conflict reveals character like acid reveals gold. It doesn't create your principles, it exposes them. Cato the Younger, the Stoic senator who stood alone against Julius Caesar's tyranny, knew this better than anyone. When his political rivals mocked him, he didn't counter with insults, he leaned into their accusations, agreeing so extravagantly that their words lost all power. Yes, I'm stubborn because integrity isn't negotiable. That's the Stoic secret to conflict. It's not about proving your worth, but proving your consistency. Your opponent might walk away thinking they've won, but you'll walk away knowing you held true. Modern arguments follow the same trap. We conflate being right with being respected. A coworker dismisses your proposal. The ego screams, make them see they're wrong. The Stoic asks, is correcting them necessary for the outcome or just my pride? Here's the litmus test. If you stripped away all witnesses, would you still care about this point? If the answer's no, you're not fighting for truth, you're fighting for audience approval. Cato's defiance wasn't performative, it was principled. He didn't need Caesar's allies to agree with him, he needed his own conscience to recognize him. Take relationship disputes. Your partner forgets an anniversary. The knee-jerk reaction is to weaponize hurt. You always prioritize work over us. That's emotion masquerading as fact. The Stoic approach states the observable. We agreed to celebrate today, and that didn't happen. No hyperbole, no mind reading, just facts. Suddenly, the conversation isn't about their character assassination or your victimhood. It's about problem solving. How can we prevent this next time? Strips the conflict of emotional venom and leaves only the bones of the issue. Even online debates follow this pattern. Someone misrepresents your stance on social media. The ego demands, post a clapback to humiliate them. The Stoic checks, will this correction improve understanding or just my satisfaction? Often, the wisest reply is silence, not because you're conceding, but because you refuse to let their chaos become your choreography. Marcus Aurelius wrote, the best revenge is to not be like your enemy. When you engage with trolls on their terms, you've already lost. Here's how to channel Cato in daily conflicts. 1. Detach the what from the how. Someone criticizes your work. Separate the content of their critique from their tone. Even a rude delivery might hold useful feedback. 2. Agree strategically. Like Cato, sometimes the most disarming move is to concede a point. You're right, I could have been clearer, to redirect focus to solutions. 3. Define your red lines. Know which principles are non-negotiable: honesty, respect, and which are preferences, methods, timelines. Battle for the former, adapt on the latter. History remembers Cato not because he won, but because he never betrayed himself to win. That's the gift of Stoic conflict. When you stop needing to convince others of your worth, you're free to simply live it. The courtroom, the office, the dinner table, they're all just stages testing the same question. Will you stay faithful to your character when the spotlight turns hot? Answer with action, not argument, and the verdict won't matter. You'll already know. People show their true colors when they stop getting a reaction from you. That's the brutal clarity of Stoic detachment, not as a shield to hide behind, but as a spotlight to reveal who genuinely values your presence versus who merely enjoys the drama you provide. The Stoic view from above isn't just about gaining perspective, it's about conducting an emotional forensic analysis. Imagine soaring high enough to see your relationships as an archaeologist would, examining patterns in the sediment, noting which connections leave fossilized evidence of mutual growth versus those that only show cracks of take and no give. This is how you distinguish allies from emotional tourists. Start with a 30-day emotional audit. Each evening, record 3 data points. 1. Who drained me today? Not just obvious antagonists, but subtle energy vampires. The friend who always steers conversations back to their problems. The co-worker who leaves you feeling subtly judged. 2. Who replenished me? The people who left you lighter, sharper, or more inspired than they found you. 3. What did I learn about my own boundaries? Where did I say yes when I meant no? Where did I withhold warmth out of fear rather than choice? By day 10, patterns emerge. That cousin who just needs to vent every Sunday. Notice how your Monday productivity plummets. The colleague whose harmless teasing leaves you questioning your competence. See how often you downplay your wins around them. Detachment isn't coldness, it's data collection. You're not cutting people off, you're upgrading your discernment. History offers a masterclass in this. When Seneca's so-called friends abandoned him after his exile, he didn't rage. He observed, prosperity makes friends, adversity tests them. The emotionally unavailable don't fear abandonment, they leverage it. By refusing to chase, they expose who's willing to stay. Apply the silent treatment test. For 1 week, stop initiating contact with anyone outside your inner circle. Who notices, who adjusts, who demands to know why you've changed? The answers will shock you. That gym buddy who never texts first, they weren't avoiding you, they were indifferent. The friend who panics when you don't respond instantly. They're not invested in you, they're addicted to your availability. Here's the twist: detachment doesn't just reveal others' intentions, it exposes your own. Are you staying in that lopsided friendship because you value them, or because you fear being alone? Clinging to that toxic job because it's meaningful, or because you've conflated suffering with nobility? The view from above strips away the stories. What remains isn't always pretty, but it's always true. And truth, however uncomfortable, is the only foundation worth building on. Friendships aren't meant to be fossils preserved perfectly in amber, unchanged by time. They're living things, and like all living things, they either grow or wither. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, put it bluntly: you must live for another if you wish to live for yourself. But here's the part we often miss: another doesn't mean everyone. Some connections are seasons, not lifetime sentences, and the moment you start feeling guilty about outgrowing someone, remember, growth isn't betrayal. It's the natural order of things. Think of your oldest friendships, that childhood friend who still jokes about your awkward phase at 35. Does it feel like nostalgia, or does it feel like they're holding you hostage to a version of yourself you've shed? The Stoics didn't advocate callousness, but they prized discernment. Seneca wrote, "Time discovers truth, not malice, not drama, just time." The person who cheered your dreams at 20 might resent them at 40 because their own stalled. The coworker who once felt like a confidant might now drain you with endless complaints. This isn't about blame, it's about alignment. Here's the Stoic exercise for graceful goodbyes. Next time you feel the pang of drifting apart, ask: 1. What role did this person play in my life? Not who they are, but what they facilitated: laughter, challenge, comfort. 2. Do we still serve that role for each other? Be ruthless. If the answer's no, honor what was without clinging to what isn't. 3. Can this change? Sometimes a candid conversation reignites a bond. Often, it simply confirms the distance. Modern breakups aren't just romantic. The friend who ghosts when you start setting boundaries, the mentor who grows cold when you surpass them, these are endings too. But society tells us to cling, to perform loyalty long after the connection has hollowed out. Stoicism offers a quieter alternative: gratitude without guilt. Thank them inwardly for what they gave, then release them, not with a dramatic speech, but with the gentle acceptance of a leaf falling from a tree. Seneca's letters reveal his own friendships evolving. Some faded naturally, others ended when principles clashed, yet he never framed this as loss but as curation. Imagine your social circle as a library. Some books stay forever, dog-eared and beloved. Others, once cherished, no longer resonate. You wouldn't burn them, you'd just move them to the archive. The emotionally unavailable label often gets slapped on those who refuse to force dead connections back to life. But there's a profound difference between abandoning people and honoring your own evolution. When you stop conflating longevity with value, you make room for relationships that fit, not just those that last. And that's the secret Seneca knew. True loyalty isn't measured in years. It's measured in truth. The modern world worships at the altar of busyness. We wear exhaustion like a badge of honor, filling every waking minute with tasks, notifications, and obligations, all while secretly wondering why we feel so empty. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher whose lectures attracted crowds despite his exile, saw this coming 2,000 years ago. We labor to acquire wealth but make no effort to improve our souls. That's the paradox of hustle culture. We're running so fast from stillness that we've mistaken motion for meaning. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Busyness is often just avoidance in a productivity mask. Avoidance of hard questions, uncomfortable silences, and the terrifying freedom of being alone with your own thoughts. Consider the executive who schedules back-to-back meetings to avoid a failing marriage. The student who buries themselves in extracurriculars rather than confront their loneliness. Even the fitness junkie obsessively tracking macros might be numbing deeper existential hunger. The Stoics called this peristasis the art of distinguishing genuine action from mere motion. Productive solitude, like Musonius practiced when he turned his exile into a thriving school, requires sitting with the quiet until it stops feeling like an enemy. Modern life, it hands us endless distractions before we ever reach that point. Social media magnifies this. We mistake constant posting for connection, mistaking visibility for intimacy. But Musonius taught that true fulfillment comes from living in agreement with nature, which includes the nature of your own mind when it's not being bombarded by inputs. The emotionally unavailable aren't necessarily cold. They might just be the few who have learned that solitude isn't something to escape but to master. Try this experiment for one day. Replace compulsive busyness with intentional pauses. Between tasks, wait 60 seconds before reaching for your phone. Notice the itch to do something, anything, to fill the void, that discomfort. That's the withdrawal symptom of emotional avoidance. The Stoic remedy isn't idleness, it's purposeful stillness. Like a farmer letting fields lie fallow to restore fertility, sometimes the most productive thing you can do is nothing at all. Musonius students learned this through brutal simplicity. He banned lavish meals, insisting hunger taught gratitude. He made them sleep on hard beds, proving comfort was optional. By stripping away distractions, he forced them to confront the only thing that truly mattered, their own choices. Modern hustle culture does the opposite. It convinces us that if we're busy enough, we won't have to face the quiet places where real growth happens. The emotionally unavailable have an advantage here. Their natural resistance to constant connectivity becomes a perverse strength. While others drown in noise, they've built a life where silence isn't a threat but a teacher. And in that silence, you'll find something extraordinary: the clarity to distinguish motion from meaning and the courage to choose the latter, no matter how uncomfortable the stillness gets. Because fulfillment was never hiding in another notification. It was waiting where it's always been, in the spaces between. Your peace isn't up for debate. It's the one territory you get to govern absolutely. Marcus Aurelius called this the inner citadel, a mental fortress where external chaos can't breach without your permission. Picture a medieval castle with drawbridges and guards. The outside world can rage storms, invaders, noise, but inside those walls, silence, sovereignty. That's the Stoics' ultimate power, the ability to retreat behind gates of calm no matter what's happening outside. But here's the catch: you're the only one who can lower the drawbridge. Let's make this practical. Your coworker ambushes you with last-minute demands, framing it as just this once. The untrained reflex is to sigh and comply, trading your peace for temporary appeasement. The Stoic alternative, a neutral, I can't take this on without sacrificing the quality of my other work. Let's discuss priorities. No hostility, no guilt, just an unshakable declaration that your focus isn't communal property. Marcus wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. That strength isn't in resisting others, but in refusing to abandon yourself. Family gatherings test this skill masterfully. Aunt Linda interrogates you about your life choices, her tone dripping with disapproval. Most people either explode, "It's none of your business," or shrink into defensive explanations. The inner citadel offers a third path. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm comfortable with my decisions." Then silence, not the icy kind, but the serene kind. You're not blocking her out, you're simply declining to hand her the keys to your emotional state. The magic lies in the how. Notice these responses share three traits. 1. They're declarative, not defensive. You're stating facts, not pleading for understanding. 2. They're brief, no over-explaining, which just gives boundary pushers material to debate. 3. They're emotionally neutral, no charged language to escalate tension. Even in romantic relationships, the inner citadel holds. Your partner wants to rehash an argument at midnight. Instead of engaging while exhausted, try, "I care about resolving this, but I'll be clearer-headed in the morning." You're not avoiding conflict, you're choosing the conditions under which you'll engage. That's the essence of Marcus's fortress, not to isolate, but to interact on your terms. Consider the alternative. Every time you let someone else's urgency become your emergency, every time you prioritize their comfort over your calm, you're not being kind, you're being complicit in your own depletion. The Stoics weren't against generosity, they were against self-betrayal disguised as virtue. So the next time someone tries to storm your gates, remember, you're not being rude by protecting your peace. You're being strategic because the world will always have demands. The real question is, will you have yourself when it's done? And that answer is yours alone to give. Think of your deepest struggles like rare spices, precious, potent, and wasted on the wrong palate. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who transformed his enslavement into wisdom, had a ruthless approach to sharing personal truths. If someone tells you that so and so speaks ill of you, don't bother answering back. Simply say, "Obviously he doesn't know my other faults, or he wouldn't have mentioned only these." That's the essence of selective self-disclosure, recognizing that your vulnerabilities aren't communal property, but treasures reserved for those who have earned the right to hold them. Modern oversharing culture gets this backward. We mistake intimacy for volume, dumping our unprocessed traumas onto coworkers, casual acquaintances, even strangers online. But emotional labor is finite. Every confession you make to someone incapable of holding it is like watering concrete and expecting flowers. The Stoic alternative. A three-layered filtration system for deciding who deserves your narrative. First, the wisdom filter. Would I take life advice from this person? Before sharing your divorce struggles with a perpetually single coworker, ask, do their own relationships model the insight I need? It's not about elitism, it's about alignment. You wouldn't ask a chef to fix your car. Why outsource emotional healing to those still bleeding from their own wounds? Epictetus trained his students to spot this. When you see someone weeping in grief, take care not to be overcome by the impression that they're in real trouble because of external things. Translation: not every sympathetic ear is a wise one. Next, the reciprocity audit. Have they ever matched my vulnerability with their own? That friend who only surfaces to vent about their problems but ghosts when you mention yours. They're not a confidant, they're an emotional straw, sipping your reserves without ever offering their cup. Ancient Stoics practiced mutual elevation relationships where disclosure wasn't transactional but transformational. Like two blacksmiths tempering steel, real connection requires both parties to bring equal heat. Finally, the motive check. Am I sharing to heal or to perform? Social media has blurred this line. Posting about your anxiety to find community, that's courage. Posting to curate a brave survivor persona, that's emotional theater. Marcus Aurelius wrote in private journals, not public posts, precisely because raw self-examination loses power when performed for applause. History offers a masterclass in this discretion. When Seneca's political enemies spread rumors about him, he didn't issue public rebuttals. He wrote privately to Lucilius, "It's none of my business what others think of me." Not out of arrogance, but efficiency, he conserved his emotional energy for relationships that could actually help him grow. Practical application. Try the Stoic sharing pause. Before revealing something personal, ask 1. What's my ideal outcome from this disclosure? Clarity, comfort, or just filling silence? 2. Is this person equipped to help me reach that outcome? Do they have the wisdom, bandwidth, and trust? 3. Will this sharing expand my peace or just my audience? Not every truth needs witnesses. The emotionally unavailable don't hoard their stories, they invest them. Like a gardener planting seeds in fertile soil instead of barren rock, they understand that not every ear deserves their whispers, and in that discernment they discover something revolutionary. The less you explain yourself to the wrong people, the more energy you have to live your truth without explanation. Comfort zones aren't just cozy, they're coffins for potential. The Stoics knew this better than anyone, which is why they practiced voluntary discomfort, deliberately seeking out hardship to inoculate themselves against life's inevitable blows. Imagine a boxer who only trains with pillows. The first real punch would flatten them. Emotional resilience works the same way. If you spend your life avoiding discomfort, the first sting of rejection, failure, or criticism will feel catastrophic. But if you've willingly faced smaller hardships, you develop calluses where others bruise. That's the paradox. To become emotionally unbreakable, you have to break yourself first on your terms. Take cold showers. Most people shudder at the thought, scrambling to turn the knob back to warm the second discomfort hits. But the Stoic stands under the icy water, not to punish themselves, but to prove a point. Discomfort is survivable. Every second you endure is training for life's bigger freezes. The job loss, the breakup, the betrayal. When you voluntarily face the cold, you're teaching your nervous system a crucial lesson. This feeling won't kill me. I can tolerate it and I'll come out stronger. Seneca, who slept on hard floors despite his wealth, called this premeditatio malorum, in action, preparing for life's storms by dancing in the rain. Now apply this to conversations. That awkward talk you've been avoiding with your roommate about dishes piling up, the honest feedback you're scared to give your employee. These aren't just chores, they're emotional weightlifting. Every time you sidestep a difficult conversation, you're not preserving peace, you're atrophy. The Stoic alternative: lean in, start with low stakes, tell the barrister they got your order wrong, disagree politely with a friend's opinion. Each time you do, you're flexing a muscle most people let wither: the ability to tolerate tension without folding. Here's your 7-day discomfort diet to test this. Day 1. Take a cold shower for 30 seconds longer than you want to. Notice how the panic peaks, then plateaus. Day 2. Wear an outfit that's slightly outside your usual style, not for attention, but to confront the fear of being perceived. Day 3. Have that conversation you've been avoiding. Keep it short, but say the true thing. Day 4. Skip caffeine or sugar. Observe how cravings feel like emergencies but aren't. Day 5. Sit in silence for 10 minutes without distractions. No music, no screens, just you and your thoughts. Day 6. Ask for help with something small. Most resistance to vulnerability starts here. Day 7. Do nothing for an hour. No productivity, no self-improvement, just existence. The goal isn't masochism, it's recalibration. Modern life wires us to chase ease, but the Stoics understood something radical. Comfort is the enemy of resilience. Like a ship that never leaves harbor to avoid storms, you might stay safe, but you'll never discover what you're capable of weathering. History's greatest examples embody this. Cato the Younger wore threadbare tunics in Rome's Senate to remind himself luxury was optional. Musonius Rufus ate simple meals even when feasts were offered. These weren't acts of deprivation, but declarations of freedom, a proof that their happiness wasn't held hostage by external conditions. Your turn. Start small, but start today. Because the emotionally unavailable aren't those who feel less, they're those who have practiced feeling difficult things by choice. And that's the ultimate power move. When life tries to blindside you with hardship, you can smirk and say, "I've trained for this." Your reputation isn't built on what happens to you, it's forged by what you do with it. Chrysippus, the third head of the Stoic school and a master logician, dissected this truth with surgical precision. He taught that between every stimulus and response lies a critical space called horm, the moment of impulse where you decide whether to act with intention or react with reflex. Modern life tests this daily. Someone tags you in a heated political thread, and your fingers itch to fire off a scorching rebuttal. A colleague takes credit for your idea, and your chest tightens with the urge to expose them publicly. That's horm in real time, the crossroads where character is revealed. Social media has turned impulse control into an endangered skill. The dopamine hit of a viral clapback, the fleeting satisfaction of a subtweet, these are emotional junk food, tasty in the moment but corrosive over time. Chrysippus warned that unexamined impulses become habits and habits become identity. Scroll through any comment section and you'll see this play out. People who have trained themselves to react with outrage to every perceived slight, until outrage isn't just their default setting, it's their entire personality. The Stoic alternative measured response, not suppression but selection. Imagine your mind as a nightclub bouncer. Not every thought earns entry. The insults, the provocations, the bait. They're rowdy patrons trying to sneak in. Your job isn't to fight them, it's to decide who gets past the velvet rope. Consider two responses to the same insult. Person A immediately tweets "stay mad," losers to their critics, reveling in the temporary high of defiance. Person B pauses, then posts a neutral, interesting perspective. Let's discuss solutions. The first wins the battle of wit, the second wins the war of perception. Chrysippus' genius was recognizing that horm isn't about denying emotion, it's about channeling it. Anger can fuel justice if directed wisely. Frustration can spark innovation if harnessed, but raw, untempered reaction, that's just emotional arson, burning bridges you might need later. History's greatest leaders understood this. When George Washington was accused of incompetence during the Revolutionary War, he didn't lash out at his detractors. He meticulously documented his strategies and let results speak. That's Stoic impulse control in action, transforming reactive energy into constructive motion. Compare that to modern influencers who thrive on drama, their reputations built on quicks, and because they've conditioned their audience to expect spectacle, not substance. The litmus test is simple. When provoked, ask 1. Will this response align with who I aspire to be, not who they've temporarily made me feel like? 2. Does engaging serve a purpose beyond ego? Is there wisdom to share or just wounds to lick? 3. What's the cost of silence? Sometimes speaking up is the virtuous choice, but it should be a choice, not a compulsion. Chrysippus' legacy isn't just a philosophy, it's an operating system for integrity. In a world that rewards reactivity, the most radical act is to respond like you've already won. Not because you're unbothered, but because you've decided what's worth bothering with. And that's how actions, not reactions, write your story. Death isn't just an event waiting at the finish line, it's a lens that sharpens everything you see right now. The Stoics didn't view mortality as morbid, they treated it as the ultimate editor, cutting through life's trivialities with brutal precision. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this: you're holding your own obituary. Not the sanitized version full of achievements and accolades, the raw, unfiltered truth. What conversations dominate the final paragraphs? The petty argument with your neighbor over a parking spot, the hours spent resenting a co-worker's promotion. Or the moments of quiet courage, the laughter shared, the love that lingered even when it wasn't convenient. That's the power of Memento Mori, not to scare you into passivity, but to clarify what's worth your limited breath. Ancient Rome's Stoics took this further with visceral funeral rituals. They'd host mock banquets where guests reclined next to their own coffins, toasting to life's fragility. Imagine the shift in conversation when death isn't whispered about in hushed tones, but seated at the table like an honored guest. The small grudges, the performative outrage over minor slights, they all shrink under that gaze. Marcus Aurelius kept a skull on his desk not as a grim decoration but as a daily prompt. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Modern life desperately needs this clarity. That text message left unanswered for days because you wanted to win the silent treatment. Picture your funeral. Will anyone remember, let alone care about who blinked first in a battle of wounded egos? The colleague who slighted you in a meeting? In a century, both your names will be dust, but the energy you wasted replaying their words could have fueled something enduring. The Stoics called this sub specie eternitatis, viewing things under the aspect of eternity. It's not about nihilism, it's about reallocating your emotional bandwidth to what survives the fade. Here's how to practice this today. Next time a conflict arises, pause and run the funeral test. 1. Will this matter to anyone present at my deathbed? 2. If today were my last, would I spend these minutes like this? 3. What would the version of me with 1 month left to live advise right now? The answers won't just diffuse petty disputes, they'll reveal a startling truth. Most of what we call drama is just noise masquerading as narrative. The emotionally unavailable aren't heartless, they've simply done the math. Life's too short for rehearsing grudges, but just long enough to plant trees whose shade you'll never sit under. And that's the final rebellion against triviality, living so fully that death can't help but take a backseat to the life you've already written. Emotional dependence disguises itself as connection, mistaking entanglement for intimacy. But true freedom, the kind Cicero championed in his Stoic paradoxes, isn't about rejecting relationships, it's about refusing to let them define your worth. Picture two people caught in a storm. One clings to a raft, terrified it might drift away. The other swims freely, knowing they can reach shore with or without it. That's the difference between emotional dependence and Stoic sovereignty. Cicero's paradox, only the wise man is truly free, wasn't elitist, it was a blueprint. The wise man he described wasn't some unfeeling sage, but someone who'd mastered the art of holding love without suffocation, ambition without obsession, and pain without identity. Consider modern dating culture where needing someone is romanticized. Songs croon about being nothing without a partner, as if self-dissolution were love's highest form. Contrast this with Cicero's letters to his friend Atticus, full of warmth, yet always signed with Stoic detachment. If you are well, I am well. Not, I'm well because you're well, but a quiet acknowledgement that their bond enriched without completing him. That's emotional independence, the ability to cherish others without making them your oxygen. Work reveals the same trap. How many people graft their self-worth to job titles, only to collapse when layoffs come? The Stoic approach, amor fati, love of fate, not apathy but a fierce embrace of life's unpredictability. Imagine two artists, one creates solely for gallery approval, crushed when critics sneer. The other paints for the joy of expression, accepting praise or rejection as equally irrelevant to the act itself. That's Cicero's freedom in action, the realization that external validation is seasoning, not the meal. Even parenting tests this. The helicopter parent living vicariously through their child's achievements isn't loving harder, they're clinging tighter. Compare this to Seneca's advice to Marcia on grief. Nature requires from us some sorrow, yet never demands we be broken. Emotional independence means guiding loved ones without mistaking their path for yours, their failures for your own. The liberated Stoic isn't a hermit. They're the friend who listens without absorbing your drama, the partner who loves without demanding constant reassurance, the professional who works with passion but never begs for approval. Their secret, they've internalized Cicero's greatest paradox: to possess everything, desire nothing. Not because they've stopped caring, but because they've stopped confusing attachment with meaning. And that's the ultimate rebellion in a world addicted to emotional handcuffs, to dance freely while others beg for chains. Productive emotional unavailability isn't about shutting down, it's about leveling up. Think back through these 25 truths like tools in a mental workshop. The dichotomy of control teaches you to focus your energy where it actually matters. Negative visualization turns fear into preparation. Cognitive distancing lets you watch emotions like passing storms rather than getting swept away in the flood. Each principle isn't a wall to hide behind, but a filter letting in what serves your growth while keeping out what drains your sovereignty. This is the paradox the Stoics mastered centuries ago. By becoming less reactive to the trivial, you become more available for the essential. Now here's your challenge, one that will transform philosophy into lived wisdom. For the next 25 days, implement one Stoic truth daily. Start small. Day 1, pause for 3 seconds before responding to any provocation. Day 5, write down 3 things within your control when frustration hits. By day 15, you might find yourself mentally rehearsing potential setbacks during your morning coffee. These aren't just exercises, they're neural rewiring. Each practiced truth builds what Marcus Aurelius called your inner citadel, brick by brick. The real test comes when life inevitably knocks. That coworker who always pushes your buttons, you'll catch yourself analyzing their motives rather than absorbing their moods. The friend who thrives on drama. You'll notice their words sliding off you like rain on waxed canvas. These aren't moments of coldness, they're breakthroughs. You're not suppressing emotions, you're selecting them with the precision of a curator choosing pieces for a gallery. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, comment below with the truth that resonates most, then report back in 25 days with your most surprising Stoic victory. Maybe you'll share how silence disarmed a toxic argument, or how premeditating a fear actually made it laughable. This isn't just about sharing wins, it's about creating a living scroll of modern Stoicism, where we learn not just from ancient texts but from each other's battles. The porch where Zeno taught may be long gone, but the conversation continues right here, right now. Your turn to speak.